Jules, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much
Hi.
for being here.
It's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation. And also, it's such a poignant, important conversation because mothers returning back to work, there's so much going through their mind after you've had such a life-changing moment of having a child. I can only begin to think, gosh, if my wife decides to go back to work, what she's going to be going through. So what are you experiencing when you talk to women going back to work?
Yeah, it actually has a name. I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's called Matrescence. So it's a word that's becoming more and more popular, but very similar to when we go through those teenage years. It's a similar thing, like we change. So we go through this whole transformation as a woman, and men do too, where our values change, our identity changes, just like you do when you become, go through those teenage years, it's the same. So what I'm experiencing and what I'm hearing and seeing, and I've gone through it myself, is you want to show up differently and you become a very different person with so many different layers to you. And in this crazy world where it's just so busy, we often don't just pause and reflect on that and take time to check in with ourselves and really think about what we do. So I noticed that a lot of people will just be on autopilot. So when I coach people in the workplace as well as outside of, in the workplace, I really find that they're just on autopilot. They're just like, I've returned from maternity leave, but not really thought about that journey that they're on.
Yeah, it's definitely, when you have children, you completely change as a person. Your perspectives change. I'm a completely different person now. I'm a father of 2 boys, and we've just had Luca, who's now 4 months, and each time, there's another level of growth and change that happens, but your perspective on life and work absolutely change. I'd never heard this word. Is it
Matrescence.
Matrescence. I'd never heard that before.
A bit like adolescence,
okay,
but matrescence.
So that's got some maternal in there. So therefore, you're okay. All right. So it's basically when someone's returning to work, and
it's just when they're going through that process of becoming a parent. So it's also not giving birth to that child. So however you have become a parent, whether you've adopted, wherever you're at, you change. You completely change. And so it's that similar journey of and giving some grace that we're going through those changes. Yeah. I think that's what I find going back to work. Like, you're just expected to fit back in, bounce back, but we don't bounce back. We're not going to bounce back because we're not the same person we were. Yeah. So,
what was your journey? So when you needed to return to work, for you to now, I love your podcast, by the way, a very inspiring podcast, and for you to now be supporting other women, what was your journey when you needed to return back to work?
Yeah. This is exclusive because I actually haven't talked about this journey, because my whole podcast I set up with a desire and a need to give some space for women that were going through this, what I experienced. And so it's never been about me, but I'm hoping that by sharing my journey kind of helps understand where I've got to where it was. So I had my boy in 2020. And if you remember what was happening in 2020, how could we forget? It was the pandemic, it was COVID. So the world was literally changing around me. I had my boy, so I was going through matrescence. No one had told me about this word. It was something I'd later found out about. But I was changing. And I just felt like those conversations had not happened. I don't know if you felt like this, Simon, but it was...
Yeah, well, Logan's 4, so it is also 2020.
Oh, so we're the same. So you will resonate with some of this, but just... No one tells you how much you change. Yes, I heard lots of people saying, oh, you're going to be tired, but not this change. And then the other was I got risk of being made redundant in my job. So there was just so much going on around me that I think I just hibernated and had Hugo and myself and just, trying to keep us safe. My husband was then working from home and, just kind of, we all locked down, didn't we? And just tried to keep our family unit safe. And then my maternity leave ended and I was just on autopilot, just, okay, right, so now I go back to my job. And I thought that's just what I was going to do. I loved the job that I had left. I'd left winning an award and I was doing great. I thought, yeah, I have my baby and I go back. That's just what you do. But, oh my goodness, the moment that I had to take him to a nursery was horrendous. And I don't know if you went through the same, but I couldn't even go and look inside this nursery because it was lockdown and you couldn't go in.
Yeah, it's true.
You had the same?
Yeah, same.
I was just like, you want me to hand the most precious thing that I have to these strangers? Okay, well, we'll have a phone call with you about it. Great. You can have a chat with his key worker. Great. It was the only way I can describe it was I felt like I'd been this mama bird in this nest and I'd been keeping this little baby chick safe and we just got kicked out. Someone had just literally come and tipped that nest upside down and we were out in the cold. I just remember crying a lot outside that nursery and it was painful. It felt unnatural. I wasn't okay with it. And I resented going back to work because of it.
How old was Hugo when?
So I took the full 12 months. I kept trying not to go back. So I then took all my annual leave and then I took a month unpaid leave. So I think he was about 15 months.
Same. Yeah, Logan was 15 months.
Yeah.
They are babies at 15 months.
Babies.
Yeah. And then you hand your baby over to somebody else and you go off to work. And my wife went to work and it was like, what is going on?
Yeah. Did you see the same in her?
She was unhappy. She was very unhappy. It was a real difficult transition for her. And really unfortunately, her dad got very unwell at the same time. It was exactly the same time. So it was really tough. She went through a really, really tough couple of years. So yeah, awful year, 2020 and 21 was tough. Two really tough years.
And I think what I'm hearing and seeing is that's not, sadly, that's quite normal. We're going through it, but we just don't talk about it and take the time that I think we deserve. We give teenagers quite a lot of grace to go through that transition. But mums, it's like, okay, you're due back in the workplace now. So off, chop, let's have you back. And they were even asking me could you come back early? I was like, no, I don't want to even come back. So I went back to this crazy world where I work for a sector which never used Zoom or anything like that. It was very old school, very face-to-face meetings. But I went back where everyone was having Zoom meetings. People weren't even going into the office. And there was a little part of me that was trying to tell myself well, at least maybe I'll be having some adult conversations or maybe I'll get a hot cup of coffee finally. You try and keep positive about it, don't you? Maybe it'll be okay. But it was nuts. I remember going, one, not even knowing how to use Zoom for starters. So having to learn how to do all these calls in this very different way. But everyone had 18 months of it. So they were all flying with it. And I was just oh my gosh, I don't know if I fit in here anymore. I don't know if I can do this. Obviously, my maternity leave was there. She was going strong. Woof. That blew the like the sail out of my wind out of my sail. And then I had a new manager. So they'd brought in some new people. There was a new team. And I remember going in and it was just my new manager, this other new person that they'd brought in. And I was part of the leadership team then. And then the rest of the team were all on just this screen. I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is not what I've signed up for. And I just felt like I just did not fit in. I didn't feel like people got me. I didn't feel like people understood me. I felt like I'd lost my confidence. I felt like everyone was cheerleading my maternity cover. I didn't know where I belonged. And all I wanted to do was just be with my son. Didn't want to do it. So there was a lot of guilt, resentment to the workplace, the system. It was, tough, really tough. And I only went back 3 days. And even that was just a lot. I just was struggling. And I remember phoning up the doctor in tears, absolute tears, and just said, I hate my job. Like, out of all the things that's happened to me, like there was just this tug in my gut that was telling me something wasn't right and I didn't know what it was. And the doctor went, yeah, we're going to refer you for therapy. Because I think they could obviously hear that I wasn't okay. And no one else was picking up on that. Luckily, I did have the self-awareness to like phone the doctor and get some help. And so I got sent to a therapist. Luckily, that was face-to-face. Finally, I got some human connection. And I worked with him, and I remember him saying to me these exact words, which have always stuck with me, was through every breakdown leads to a breakthrough.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Isn't that amazing?
It's a great thing to say. Yeah.
And I probably say that to myself nearly every day, even though that's been, nearly 5 years ago, or 4 years ago. And I was, like, looking back, I was having a breakdown. Absolute breakdown.
Yeah, I love that.
And he just kept working on my mindset. Like, okay, you're in a breakdown, but there's going to be a breakthrough. And some fantastic things came from that. So one of the things was he helped me identify that I wasn't having those human connections. So I set up a local women's book club, which is still going strong. Again, we meet once a month, all a collective group of beautiful women that come together once a month to have the book club. And I think that was probably the start of my journey where I was like, okay, well, I'm in control of this. I'm in control of these emotions. I'm in control of my mind and my mindset. I think it's Will Smith that says something like I can't remember the exact quote, but he says something about how you're only responsible for your happiness. Like only you are responsible for that, right? So I was like, okay, all right, Will, I can do this. And I worked with a therapist around really trying to understand my values. And actually I needed a job that was aligned with those. And I used to be a careers coach. And I was like, actually, I really loved that. But I'd realised it was more than just about working with people on just their career. You need to look at the whole human. Like, we're not just our job. We're parents, we're brothers, we're sisters, we're the hockey player. Like, we're all these multi-facet elements. So you can't just coach someone on their career, because what about if they're a mum? What about if they're neurodiverse? You just can't focus on this one tiny lens. So it was as if someone was looking over me, but I then had this amazing opportunity to retrain as a coach. I got a new manager who was an extremely experienced coach. And not only was she my manager, but she definitely coached me through. And I was obviously then went through my training. I went through a company called Barefoot, who are the only coaches who are recommended in the Psychologist magazine. So like they're really on their A game. I was in my element, Simon. I was like, yes, this is it. Like I just loved everything I was learning. And I think I've always been a geek. Like I've always loved researching and I've always loved learning about the human mind and why we do things the way we do. I've always been curious about that. So it just ticked all these boxes. And so I just then, to coach others, I had to learn about how to let go of my self-beliefs. What narratives was I telling myself? And I remember saying to the manager that I got, like, oh, well, I just don't have any confidence. Like, since I become mum, I've got no confidence. And she was like, really? Because I see a pretty confident person. And she would call me out, like, you've just gone and done X, Y, or Z. Like, that's not what I see. And I loved that. Like, I loved that you can be this person as a coach. Like, you can challenge someone on what they're holding. Is that true? And it wasn't. She was right. I'm quite a confident person, but I didn't know maybe how to navigate myself or articulate myself. And so through learning to be a coach and then coaching others and having coaching myself and supervision, I became really super aware of myself and became quite self-aware. And I think that never stops. Like I feel like I'm a masterpiece, but I'm also a work in progress. I'm constantly working on myself and that never stops. You never stop becoming self-aware and learning about yourself, right? Like we change and it's a continued growing journey. But what I was able to really do was go, okay, well, now I've got a pretty good idea of who I am now as a mum. I'm getting more comfortable with this. And what's holding me back? Like what fear is holding me back? And what are my strengths? And I started to like really learn what my strengths were. And growing up, I'd always wanted to be a Blue Peter presenter. Had been holding that one back. And then this whole idea of what do I love, what lights me up, all of those things I started exploring. And podcasting seemed to be the perfect fit. And if I can help other women go through this journey that I've gone through, which has been horrendous. And the more and more I started speaking to people, the more and more I started coaching, and interesting, not just women, but men. Like I would coach quite senior men in the business and they would get referred because they wanted to climb the corporate ladder. This is someone very in particular. And so I got told like, yeah, this is what he wants to do. He wants to climb the corporate ladder and he wants to, focus on this. He's very young. He's very passionate. And then when I met him, he just had a baby and he was like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how to still climb the corporate ladder when I've been up all night and I'm really tired. So there's a perfect example of actually it does come through, like this transformation comes through. And I think it's about holding space for that and giving grace and time. And I've called it the return reset. So I've built a framework around how you can start to do that. And it is a reset. Like there's not very many times in our life where we can pause, take a reset, and then return. And you might return to the job that you did, but that might not be forever. You might have a different plan. You might have different goals. I wouldn't be surprised if you do. But also, you might want to go do something completely different. You might not want to go back. So it's like turn that autopilot off for a moment and you deserve that time just to really reset and decide who you are now and what you want.
Yeah, I think with such a significant change, it's interesting because you do become far more reflective. You start to really think about, well, what do I actually want my life to be like? I know when I went back to work after having Logan, it was the worst 2 years of my life.
Oh my goodness.
Because I was away from Logan, but also it wasn't just that, it was that I was in a very toxic work environment. So, and my wife, obviously, eventually she went back to work as well and she was very unhappy. So we went from, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy, self-actualization, we both felt like, hang on, she's got her dream, she's a mummy, and we're living in this nice house and we're married and everything else, and we've got our dream, but we're both miserable, we're both depressed in some respect.
Wow.
And it's like, It's because so much changes about you and your values and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, before even having Logan, I'd never really thought about or written down what values were. What does it actually mean? And it was just like, I thought this was going to be the best time ever.
That's what we're told.
Yeah, this is going to
it?
be the best time ever. And actually something fundamentally shifts and changes in you. So I'm really interested. You mentioned your framework is called Reset. Maybe we could dive into what that framework looks like.
Yeah, definitely. So the return reset, inside that reset, I've called it Shine, because I think for me, it is about shining a light on that path and finding what lights you up. And so S is for self. It's exactly what I was just saying there. So becoming really self-aware, what's going on there? Who are you now? And then H is for heartfelt connection. So that connection with yourself and your identity. And then I is intention. So really starting to think about doing things with that intention. And then N is for navigate. So you're navigating around your barriers, which we're often are not very good at. Not very good at putting those boundaries. Sorry.
Yeah, like self-limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
So
and
we'll go into each one in a second. But
okay.
yeah. So and
then E is empower.
Empower.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go for each one. So I'm sure there's lots we can talk about on each one of those. So so maybe we think about self. You've changed as a person, as we kind of anyone listening to this who's a parent knows you change as significantly as a person. I went through quite severe depression after Logan was born. So if I think about 2020, he was born, and then I was in a very challenging role at the time, quite a toxic workplace, which I just accepted up until that point and just thought, okay, I just grind through it as normal. I just make things work as normal. And then I think after Logan was born, it was just, I'm also a new dad learning how to be a dad. And for me, I'm very fortunate to have my wife, because my wife was always like super mummy. She was always going to be a mummy. That was her thing. And I always wanted to be a parent, but I was like, I know I'm going to need help at this time. And like, I wouldn't know how to hold the baby or change a nappy or anything. I'd never had even a family member that was a baby before. So like, I'd never even been around babies. So, but I know I wanted to be a fully present, involved dad. But those next 2 or 3 years for me, so self is really important. I went into quite severe depression for about 2 or 3 years. I can reflect. I mean, it's about 5 years later now. So it's a while. Obviously, Logan's nearly turning 5. So like that period in time, when we talk about a reflective time, or you talked about this bit here. Every breakdown leads to a breakthrough. That was my moment, exactly, because that breakdown has led to me discovering, this is why it relates back to self, me discovering who I am now.
It does. It really does.
And
it's giving me goose pimples, just like you talking about it.
Yeah, that's the journey you go on, and you become, you have to think about, I did a lot of work around the vision, the future, my future self, who am I becoming? And I think values starts to become really important, especially when you have children, because like, who are you? Like, what are you showing up for? Like, what's the purpose? So if you do something, everything's with purpose now. There's nothing, literally nothing. I've removed or deleted so much from my life that doesn't align to a value. So like I'll go back to Sal. I want to give some context while you're grabbing your notes. So I have 3 values now. And we can talk about this is yours, which is health.
Yeah.
It's my number 1 value, family.
I love that you know these, Simon.
And growth.
This makes me so happy.
Yeah. So but I worked with a coach on those as well.
Amazing.
But now, there's nothing that I do that doesn't align to one of those.
They're
3.
your compass.
Yeah.
And do you find that having those values makes making decisions so much easier?
Easy.
Yeah. Because
Easy.
you just go back to those little guiding values that just help you with those decisions.
Yeah, because like, so health, for example, when I was going through a really challenging time, that depressive time, me and my wife were drinking every day, all the time. Like, not to but every day would be a bottle of wine, cheese and wine night every day. We both, felt terrible at the end of that period. Yeah. So health, does that align to health? No. So going down the pub, having beers, that doesn't align to me at all.
Oh gosh.
So you start to make those sorts of changes.
Yeah.
You sleep better, you feel better, you show up better as a parent.
And this could be a whole nother podcast. But and I've interviewed a mum who actually became an alcoholic and went into rehab. And we had a big discussion around how the parent lifestyle is like, they sell it with drinking, don't they? We went and had a look in the card shops, for birthday cards for women and mums. It's all about drinking.
Oh gosh, yeah.
There was a post on Instagram, and it's a local group thing, and they're doing a mum's night out, but it was plastered with wine, and they call it mummy's juice, wine. So there's no wonder that you guys were reaching for that, because that's probably what's unconsciously set in our minds. Oh yeah, you go and when you've had a hard day, you go and have a drink. As you said, it just makes you feel horrendous the next day. It's not good for your health. And then it can, Yeah,
and it becomes, I remember one day we both worked out our units, and we realised, and we were like, we are 4 times, 5 times above the number. And it's taken years to kind of undo a lot of that stuff. And now I rarely drink now, but not from from the fact that it doesn't align to the number one value, which is health. Now, it's my wife's birthday this weekend. We will go out for a drink,
of course, and enjoy it.
But it's it is what it is. So let's go to self. What's your framework for thinking about self?
So self is definitely that identity and vision. So who do you want to become? So it's about doing it sounds like you maybe did a similar thing, but vision boards work for you, and having those manifest quotes, whatever it is that kind of works, help you vision what you want to be. Ultimately, we're role models for our children. So there's a very famous quote about kids will never do what we say, but they will copy our actions. So whether we like it or not, we are role models. And I don't know if you've ever had this, but when my son does something that I don't like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's got that from me. Mm-hmm. The way maybe he said something or responded to something, and I'm like, oh, I'm just seeing a mini me, and I don't like that.
They're a reflection of us,
right? So isn't that a beautiful gift? What a beautiful gift and opportunity that we can see that and do that, and we can grow and develop with them. I think that's really cool.
Well, and this is where I feel like children will bring out the best in you if you choose to. Yeah. So if you do hide, like my wife and I did at the very beginning, because we weren't sure where we were, and going back to work, and it was all tough and all that kind of stuff. In the end, we both decided to lean into health. And now Logan's older, there's a conversation around our table around Daddy eats his vegetables first, and watch, I eat my vegetables first.
Exactly.
And now Logan eats his strawberries first, or he eats his raspberries first. And there's a conversation around the table which is, come on, Logan, you want to be strong like Daddy. Look how well Daddy's doing. So now here we are 2 years later, when we've gone, right, we're going to really invest into this health journey.
Yeah.
I never miss a gym session. It's just part of the process. And that I can actually be really proud and go, come on, mate, we're going to go train. We're going to go out and walk today, or we're going to do this, whatever. So we're leading him into a healthy lifestyle.
I love that.
Because that's
that's your value.
That's the value. So therefore, as a family, we now lean into those values. Yeah. Because that's what you want for your children.
Yeah. Whatever's important for you, what you want that vision to be. So that's exactly it. You've decided, well, that's what we want. That's where we want to get to. And now you're doing it. It's just become habitual. It's just become part of your day. I'm the same. I'm one of those weirdos that likes the Peloton.
Our Pelotons are great. Pelotons are great.
I love it because I had the gym membership, but finding the time to get there was really challenging for me. And for me, exercise definitely lights me up. I need it. I had to get rid of a sofa out the house to make space for it. But actually, the same as you, like Hugo now will see me like on the Peloton and he gets on it and like his legs are now just a little bit long enough and he'll like pretend like, just like, oh, can I do a Peloton? But he sees his mummy doing it and he sees, you know, mummy taking her time. And I will say, like, I'm having my time to do that. Because it is really important to me. And actually, I just feel really rubbish if I don't do it. But then equally, then it is part of his DNA, you know, that we do things and we exercise and we have a healthy lifestyle too. Weirdly, I never thought health was one of my values until someone pulled me up on how much, like, it. I guess I don't see it as a value because it's just so intrinsically, like, in me. Like, I think it's just part of me that I didn't even recognize it as a value, but it definitely guides a lot of the things that I do.
If you think about also the psychology of what's happening with your child, you know, between like those, when it's actually, you've been through therapy as I have, and interestingly, if you do any inner child work or you go back to your understanding, a lot of those things happen, they sit often between, you know, ages of 4 and 7 or 4 and 11 or something like that. That's where a lot of the, you know, trauma, whatever your trauma is come from that age. And now we can be quite super aware as parents, if you've been through that journey, to go, hang on, what they're witnessing at this stage, they're so present, they can't, I mean, Logan can't even remember what he's done at school that day because he's so present and enjoyed it so much. He's like, I don't know what I did today. I'm like, okay, cool. But he's so present, but it's all being recorded.
Of course.
So at 4, 5, 6, 7, you've got to think about the environment that they're in is what they are recording. And that will start to go to make up their character. So if they see mummy and daddy being healthy, mummy and daddy training or mummy and daddy doing whatever, and how you interact with each other, that's part of an imprint on their brain. Like it's going to be there forever.
It's pretty scary, isn't it?
It's such a, when you start to understand the psychology, it's a huge responsibility.
It's humongous. Huge. And like, you know, I definitely blamed my parents for some of the decisions they made. And now I'm a parent myself. I'm like, okay, well, like, so one of my values is trust. Like, I trust that everyone's doing the best that they can with the tools that they've got. And I wholeheartedly believe, like, my parents did the best that they could. And so they, interestingly, talk there about those formative years. And they got divorced when I was about 7, 8. I mean, and that impacted me hugely. And you talk there about imprinting, but that's exactly what happens. So you have something that happens in your childhood and those beliefs stay with you and those stories that you write stay with you. So I grew up with my mum being, you know, single mum, and I just the way that she was. When I then became a mum, I got really scared because I was scared that I was going to be her. Because I started seeing her show up in me. Of course it did, because she was my role model. That's what I had to learn from. And so you're right, you know, that inner child that is in there, like we learn from those around us. And so there was no surprise that some of the ways that I was being and behaving were like her. But I think what's really powerful is that we have a choice. And we have a choice to rewrite those stories. And we have a choice to change that. And I think that's the beautiful gift of being a parent, is that we've got an opportunity to do something different that we maybe didn't think was right for us. Not that they did anything, you know, as I said, I wholeheartedly believe that we all do things with the tools that we've got. Like we're all trying to do our best. Like I don't think my mum did some things she did with intent. I think she was just trying to do the best with what she had, right? With the best, with how she knew how to do things. But here's the cool thing, is that if you become self-aware and you can do that work on yourself, you can change that and rewrite that, can't you? And decide. And I think that's what was really powerful with me, was I was able to go, well, yeah, I'm not my mum. Hugo's Hugo. Like, you know, this is a whole new chapter. Like, I don't have to be like that. And my mum was quite traditional with my dad, where, you know, my dad worked and he earned the money. You know, my mum had like a little job, but it was a very that traditional kind of dynamic, I think. And so I grew up thinking that's probably what I needed to do, right? Like, oh, I marry a man and then I have a baby and that's what happens. But hey, here's the crazy thing. 2025 is really different. And the way that the cost of living is that you need to work, mama. And there's an expectation actually for you to work now in this world, you know? Great that women now have a chance to work. That's brilliant. But what's really crazy is that the world of work wasn't designed for mamas. So that's a whole crazy game that we're trying to figure out and work out, which I didn't have the role models to teach me that because it was so different. So it's not surprising it's tough. There's a lot going on there. There's a huge transformation.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I what you learn, I think, through therapy, but also through just becoming a parent yourself, is that look, our parents did absolutely everything they could with the tools that they had. But there's also, like, we're very fortunate to live in the internet age. So therefore, information is available, whereas it wasn't available when I was growing up, and certainly was not available to them as parents.
Yeah.
You know, so how did they learn to be parents? Well, just trial and error and hearing it from their friends or whatever.
And from their parents.
From their parents. So they would copy behaviours. Of course they would.
Yeah.
So, you know, and times are very different. Very, very different back to, gosh, what it was like then. And they just did the best that they could. I think when you just kind of accept that, they absolutely did the best they could.
Yeah.
The difference is now it's that awareness and information where you can choose how you're going to be and how you're going to show up and what your routine's going to be like, you know, so you there is a lot of choices that you have available to you, but you're not aware of that.
Agree.
Until you start doing the work.
And I'm going to share with you something that it was another coach said to me about choice. So did you have the choice of being here naked today, Simon?
I could have been here naked.
You could have been.
I'd never thought about it.
You hadn't thought about it, but you could have. You had that
choice.
choice.
Yeah, you could have, yeah.
Now.
You'd be shocked. You'd be like, by the way, this is a naked podcast.
Well, that's a new show. Yeah. There we go. There was the naked chef. Maybe this is the naked podcast.
Well, yeah, I mean, last week I was talking to someone, we were going to do ayahuasca together on the show. So we can do ayahuasca last week. Now we're naked.
Well, it's all happening. It's all happening here, isn't it? But I've now given you that awareness as a thought. So before, you could have done, but you didn't think about it.
Yeah.
You put your clothes on because that's what you do. You could, if you wanted, on your next podcast, turn up naked.
Okay.
That plant, that seed is now in there. You now have that awareness. So I'm interested. You have to text me. Next time you do your next podcast, did you think, shall I go naked? But you've now got that choice. That choice was always there available to you.
Yeah, but
you just never really thought about it.
I never thought about it. No.
Because you just do the way things that you do. So choice is really powerful. Having choice unlocks a lot for us.
I think when you're aware that you can have a choice in how you show up, that's the biggest thing.
It's pretty
Now,
cool.
I heard that lots of years ago when I was going through a difficult time and I was like overreacting to certain things, getting triggered by certain things, triggered by certain people. And I'd completely dismissed it. And I just thought, no, this is how I react in this situation. Someone sent me a horrible email, I will react in a way. And what I realised was that I was just holding on to trauma. It had nothing to do with that email, that person. But in the time when you're in it, you're like, what do you mean I'm overreacting? This is wrong. They violated
it's
me.
It's not me.
Yeah, of course. And funny enough, many years later now, exactly the same situation can happen and you can just go, yeah, it's not. And me and my coach work on this a lot, which is that things are going to happen no matter what. And it's how quickly you recover from the thing. And let's just say a bad thing's happened at work or a bad thing's happened somewhere. How quickly do you emotionally react or respond to it? I was in quite a difficult meeting a couple of weeks ago and I'd learned how to meditate during the meeting and reflect and the energy, which was quite negative towards me, just let it bounce off. And I left that meeting going really proud of myself, which was the first time I've actually just deflected the energy.
Just had that shield.
Just thought, I'm not taking your shit. Why should I?
Yeah.
Like you can have it.
Because how's that going to serve you leaving that meeting?
Yeah.
If you hadn't have done that, how would you have left?
And that's just exactly the same sort of situation years ago, which would have been, I'm off down the pub, I'm going to go drink for 3 days and party and everything else. I was like, no, I'm, destructive. And now it's like, okay, they can just bounce off you. So that is mindset, but it's also doing the work and knowing who you are.
Because that's hard.
I feel like where you can be, this is therapy, this is mindset, this is being with a coach like yourself. That's where you can eventually get to. And I only even discovered that a week or so ago. So it's, that whole self-awareness piece is real significant. It's probably the most foundational in this whole piece is once you start going on the journey.
Yeah, because you need to identify who you are and who you want to be, and then you can work out how you're going to get there, right? But it's like, well, I did start with that. I don't want to be my mum. Like, yes, she did the best she could, bless her, as a single mum and all the baggage that she was bringing from her childhood, right, that she hadn't unpacked. But I'm me, and I've got a really great opportunity here. So it is like, well, what do you want? What do you want that to be? And I am a lover of vision boards. I think I've been doing vision boards probably before they were trendy. Cutting out pictures and sticking. I did one when I've probably still got it, but I did a big one before I had my son around, what I anticipated it was going to. So I went into having the birth, like I did the hypnobirthing. So really using that mindset of like, this is what it's going to be like. This is how I'm going to be in control. This is how I want to feel, because we are in control of that. Like you said, all this shit happens around us. That's life. But how you react is down to you. And I feel like a vision board is a really amazing way of letting your subconscious come out. And there's just some really clever tools of being able to do them where you can just let that subconscious come out and then put it down and visualize it. So I've done that I tend to do kind of like one a year. And I did one when I went through this whole journey of like how I want to be as a leader as well, like in my workplace. And they are really, really powerful. And there are other ways you can do it, but there's something really magical about that creative element. I actually, when I was doing it in a workshop, I was doing it with me and a senior leader, and he used to be a teacher. And he was like, oh, do not get this glue and scissors out. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, he was just not entertaining it whatsoever. He taught maths. Like, he is a very number-focused, driven kind of guy. And the lady that was facilitating it was like, just enjoy the process. Like, just do this, okay? And I was obviously like that up for it. But we did it, and afterwards he was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe what came out of that. And he was surprised. And I was like, wow, if it can work on someone like him, there is power in it. And being able to just let that creative, because again, I'll ask you the question, like, when do you have your best thoughts?
When do I have my best thoughts? Definitely when I'm in the gym, when I'm walking, when I'm meditating. They're the times.
So when your brain is relaxed, it's turned off. Mine are always like in the shower. It's like the most magical.
Oh, shower, absolutely.
Yeah, right? It's like the most magical thing, because you're giving your brain that rest, and it's having time to tap into that creative, because we're always on the go. We're always doing something. Like, our brain's always in that fight or flight, like it's operating. But when you're just safe and relaxed, and you're telling your brain you're relaxed, it does the most magical stuff. So I think it is like taking time for that. And like, if someone's listening to this and it's like, well, I'm a mum, I don't have time to do any of that. It's true. Like, you're just so busy. So this is why I think it's really important that you take time to pause. So whether it is a therapist, a coach, a friend, whoever, you need to have that time to go, okay, well, yeah, how do I want to show up now? Like, who do I want to be? And you can use like manifesting as well. But I strongly believe, and this is something I did, I was at an event and there was a manifest wall, and I did write down, in 5 years, I'm going to have a podcast, I'm going to build a community. And I didn't just write that down and stick it on the wall and it all magically appeared, right? Like I had intent. So I was like, okay, I knew where I wanted to go. I still have, like you always have these goals where you want to get to, right? And I think that's healthy. But you need to work out how you're going to get there and what you're going to do. You've got to put the work in. You can't just stick that fridge magnet on the fridge and be like, oh, I'm going to be X, and you've got to put the work in.
There's no point manifesting without daily action.
Right.
There's no point. Even if it's just a tiny step forward,
you've got to do it.
You still, I think manifesting. So I manifest when I meditate, and I think about a thing, and then I allow my intuition to then guide me later.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big things that I've learned. And then if it's still a thing, I might just make tiny. So if you almost never said this before, but if you link it with atomic habits, which is just taking a tiny step forward to do the thing, a tiny bit of daily action, eventually that all compounds and builds up.
It becomes a habit, doesn't it?
And then, but also the benefit of that, because I have a lot of ideas all the time, you also find out, was this just an idea or is this actually a thing? So, and then as you start going on the journey with minimal investment or anything on those, like whatever it is you're talking about, do I want to try this thing or do that thing? Just do a little bit of it, a tiny bit. And then, I put together a business plan a few weeks ago and I started promoting it to some people. And then one person came back and told me what he really thought of it. And in the end, I was like, I agree with you. I'm not going to fight. And I was like, it's totally the wrong direction for me.
Right.
And I was like, I was really, I thought of that, and it was great. There's no investment, but I could have gone on and wasted 1 or 2 years of my life. And until someone actually held up a mirror and went, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right.
That's so helpful.
So it's good. So I manifested this thing. I started working on it. And a few weeks later, I got a realization of someone who's really experienced was like, you need to think about all these things and that's why it's not going to work.
So will you go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, well...
It just redirected me.
It
just redirected me to you're right. And actually what I want is this. So I was able to lean into what I actually want. So it's really interesting that manifesting with daily action and then trying to find a no or a yes or get some sort of indication if it's the right thing for you.
And I love there that you actually touched on like that gut, like that inner wisdom.
Intuition is critical.
Isn't it? But I feel like we've just lost a lot of these skills. Like we don't do that anymore. And I feel like manifesting has got a bit of a bad rep because I think people just think like, oh yeah, you like do a vision board, you stick it on the wall and then it all magically happens. Like, no. Like it's a bit like a bow and arrow, right? You've got to look at that target and you've got to go, right, that's where it's going to go. And then you aim it and it will go there. If you just go, oh, ping it off, it's never going to get to where you want it to go. So there's a lot to kind of unpack there, but knowing that direction and that journey and how you want to show up and what you want that to look like and unpacking all of that around yourself and your identity. Because you have gone through this huge transformation where you are a different person, you need to start at the beginning. You need to decide, like, okay, well, who am I now?
I think with the vision board as well, because it's visual and you proactively cut something out or you print something out and you can put it up there or take it away or that's right or it's not. I think, and then seeing it every day wherever you've got it. I actually had a huge vision board, which I've just recently taken it down because I'm starting to redo it. But I think having it there, which you look at every day, then kind of look at it and just stare or meditate and watch it and then go, well, actually, that should be there or that picture should be there or this should be there. Yeah. I think it does make a difference with the fact it's visual.
Yeah, because it's there.
It's visual and physical.
Yeah, and it can be a reminder. Mm-hmm. And the trick with it is not to leave it in the same place. So if you do put it back up there, Simon, make sure that you move it around because our brains get very, very used to things being there. I'll share something that happened to me a couple of weeks ago where my husband was starting a new job. He left the house to go to London for his new job. I left the house. It was after Easter half term. It had been the bank holiday Monday, so it was a Tuesday. I left to go and take my son back to school. You probably can relate to that vibe where it's all a bit like, first day back, manic, husband's new day. Both left the house, went and did our thing, he obviously went to a shop. I came back, was working from home, then left the house to go and pick up my son. And as I was walking up the hill, I went, I don't think I saw the car. And then we went up back home. The car wasn't there. And I just phoned up my husband. I texted him. And I was like, did you take the car to the train station? I'm sure you said you were going to cycle. He went, yeah, I cycled. I was like, the car's not here. He's like, are you kidding? I took a photo. I was like, the car is not here. It had been stolen. Oh, my word. Our car had been stolen. So obviously I phoned the police, blah, blah, blah. And then they put it like on the, like the camera alerts. And they found they didn't find the car, but it came up on one of the cameras from the night before. So when the police came, I said to them like, oh, it must have gone when I was on the school run because it was there when we left the house. And then my neighbour had said he'd saw me walking down the hill. He was going up the hill and he was like, when I came home, the car wasn't there. I was like, oh, they've stole it in the space of 10 minutes. That's crazy. Like, how did that happen? But it didn't. It went in the night. So our brains... all of us had left the house that day. No one. But then when I spoke to the neighbours, they were all like, oh, yeah, your car wasn't there this morning. So we get used to seeing things in the way they were. So if you are trying to motivate yourself with something like a vision board, move it around, put it in different places. Otherwise, you'll just get really used to it. Yeah. Okay,
good advice. Right, on Shine, spent a while on self.
Yeah, big one, right?
So what's next?
So H is for heart, so heartfelt connection. So that's a connection, that emotional awareness and your mindset. So you can start to see how they're starting to bleed into one another. But this is really starting to work on that emotion and that emotion intelligence. So as I described, when I went back, I very much felt like this resentment towards work. I felt guilt for leaving my child, all those things that are going in. Imposter syndrome, can I do this anymore? The lack of confidence. So there's all these emotions that are tied up. And what I often see are lots and lots of amazing support out there for mums returning to work, but it's these checklist things. So it's like, how do I have that conversation with my manager? How do I book in a kit day? How am I going to pump at work? How, like, all these very, what I call them transactional. And yes, of course, they're important. We need to know how to do those. But the way I describe it is imagine an iceberg. So above the sea level, where the iceberg is a smaller tip, it's all of those things. We see them, we know them, they're in mindset, we need to do them. Our brains are already chock-a-block and there's all this other shit that we've got to do. But underneath that water, that surface level, there are all these crazy emotions swimming around, that guilt, that lack of confidence, that sadness, that loneliness, that also maybe some joy, that conflicting feeling of like, I want to go back, but I don't want to go back. Like there's all this emotion under that water. So my idea with that heartfelt connection is you need to flip that iceberg because it's a bigger part. And if you look at those emotions and you look at those feelings and, you know, we name them and describe them and talk about them and how do you want to feel, then you'll be able to tackle those other things so much easier. If you can, like with this example I shared with you, like I went back going, oh, I've lost all my confidence, like I'm not confident anymore. And then for somebody to call it out, imagine if I'd have gone back already feeling like that, like going, okay, I can do this and I know how to have these conversations because I know that I am confident. I just needed to maybe remind myself of that. And for me, confidence is a skill, right? It's something you can learn to do. So if you just learn what you need to do to have that confidence and how you're going to tackle that and how you're going to deal with those feelings. So that's how that heartfelt connection with those feelings.
So it's a bit like you're embracing what's happening. You're kind of you're embracing what's happening, leaning into it in some respects. Because the thing is, as a new mummy, your mind is everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's constant because you're thinking about your child, the risk. And then as soon as you layer that with work, Now you've got a million things to think about for them, plus a million things to think about for your child. Like, just witnessing my wife, the level of anxiety,
Oh my
this,
God.
that, and also totally unreasonably and totally unfairly, you've just had a baby, so your hormones are all over the place on top of that. Like it's I
think that's a really good point. Yeah, you're hormonally, depending on when you've gone back. I mean, some people go back after 3 months.
Yeah.
6. I mean, that's still, you've got a whole lot going on
There's
in there.
a lot going on for a long time. Yeah.
A long time. And you touched on anxiety. 70% of mums have anxiety about going back. 70%. And that's fueled with things around, I don't know if I want to go back to that role.
Yeah.
Yeah, the confidence is a big part of it. I don't know how I'm going to juggle it. Again, that's all these kind of unknowns. It's a whole situation, isn't it? You think like, oh yeah, I used to do a job and I, could do that quite comfortably. But now I've got like this whole extra layer. And it's not just an extra layer. There's so much emotion attached to it. Like how I shared, like I didn't want to go back. Like I was quite happy with my little boy. But what if I didn't? Well, if I didn't go back, I'd have lost my job. And then there's the fear. Oh my gosh, if I lose that job, who on earth is going to have me? That's what I was thinking. No one's going to want a employ a mum. Like I used to work in the airline industry, and I'm ashamed to say this, but we used to call the part-timers part-time, no time, waste of time. So, when we're talking about beliefs, that's what I had in my head. I'm going to go back and everyone's going to be calling me the part-time, no time, waste of timer, because that's what I'd heard part-timers being referred to. So instantly I was going back thinking, I'm not going to be able to do what's expected of me anymore and what people are going to want. So there's all of those feelings that just need to be named and tackle them. Like they're under the surface. And like you said, you're dealing with all this other stuff, all this transactional stuff. But actually under the surface, there's some pretty transformational things going on there that, if we just go underneath that surface level and take a little look under there first.
It feels like such a big topic when you're thinking about heart and you're going back to work. How are you working with someone to kind of look at that and figure out what's going to be right for them? Because you kind of have to, what's the process? How would you work with someone on that piece?
I think there's different ways. So once you become aware and you start looking at that and you think, okay, I need to probably sit down and think about that. There are some really lovely, beautiful journaling questions that you can start doing. So I think if you're working in isolation on this, you can grab a journal, start thinking about, how am I feeling? What is going on in there? What am I scared about? What is showing up for me? What am I feeling anxious about? And start journaling on that, what's going on in there for you. And I'm a big believer in journaling, and free writing is a really beautiful way of doing it. So you literally don't even go within question. Maybe just the big topic is what are those feelings about going back, and you just write about it. And in there, those feelings will start to come out, and then you can start deciding how you want to tackle those. I do think talking to somebody is really, really beneficial, whether that is, a coach, or if you can have a friend that is not going to judge you, because you want that safe space where you're not going to feel judged and that you can be truly just listened to. And I think that's what I love in particular around coaching. If you have the right coach, they will never try and solve your problems. I wholeheartedly know when I'm working with somebody that they've got it in them to overcome what it is that's keeping them stuck. So if there is a feeling of guilt, I know that they will have the answers to get through it. It's just about giving them the space and the time and asking them the right questions to kind of think that through. And as a mum, we don't have that luxury. We don't have a luxury to stand in the shower for half an hour. And probably, we don't want to be doing that with the way the bills are right now. But having that time, even when we're pushing them around on that hour afternoon nap, you are probably still thinking about a million other things other than yourself. So really finding the right coach is my advice. But the free writing, if you're doing it by yourself, I think can work. So I have on my website, I just have a return reset journal, and it has got the shine element in there, and it's got a journaling question for each one. I'm going to be launching a whole group coaching program on this. So it will be so exclusive. It will be 6 people, 6 weeks, and really taking the time to go through it and giving the tools to deal with those. So I wouldn't be able to label those feelings for people, but they will have the space to start unpicking them and what is going on there. And then obviously the ultimate is having the one-to-one, which sounds like what you've been having with a coach, and being able to really sit down there and working through those feelings. And it is going back, like what you were saying, like, why is that coming up? Is it something that's come from the inner child belief? Or is it, where's that narrative come that you're, like for me, it was that confidence, like I wasn't, but I kept telling myself that. So it kept me small. It kept me, and fear does that to us. Fear keeps us small. It wants to keep us safe. It doesn't want us to play big. That's scary. So something was trying to keep me safe. So then, well, how do you want to show up? That goes back to that. Well, you want to become, like if we use me, for example, like, well, I want to become this thought leader. I want to be in that space. I want to show up like that. I want to be able to give back to more people. Well, you're not going to do that if you're saying that you are not confident. So what can you do about that? How can you change that? And I'll never forget the conversation when my manager said to me, I can't remember her exact question, but it would have been something around, because I know she loves this question, if you had a magic wand, like what would you do? And I was like, wow, I would be I'd build up a community of women, and I'd be, having a podcast. I'd be speaking to all these, like, I love books. I read so many books around like psychology and the coaching. I'd be talking to them on a podcast instead of reading their books. So that was the vision of where I wanted to get. But I was not going to do that with saying things like, oh, well, I really don't have the confidence and I can't do that. And, I don't belong in the space. Having those feelings ain't going to get you where you want to be. So what do you want to turn them into?
What some of the people that you've worked with, what sort of, when we're thinking about their heart specifically, and they're going through a bit of a transformation, what have you seen, what have you witnessed, what have you experienced?
From people that I've coached, oh my gosh, like the biggest things that stand out is when people have said things to me for the first time where they've never been able to say it out loud to anyone. So it's like, what is that, like, emotional awareness, like that mind, like that heart, like, and then they've gone, well, deep down, this is what I've always dreamt of. This is what I've always wanted. But there's the but. And then this, these barriers kind of stopping me get there, those feelings. And then once they've overcome those, and then they've started that journey of taking action on that and living, starting to take action towards it. I suppose like someone in particular that really comes to mind is a client that I was working with, I was sharing with you earlier, who then was in rehab, acknowledged that she had like the drinking problem, but had done a lot of work around why that had come about, but then started to really wanting to work on, and I didn't work with her on the alcohol side of things. That was obviously more therapy. But then the journey of, okay, well, I'm now working in a school. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't light me up. It's not what I want to do. But knowing that she is capable of doing these other things, and she now goes to evening class to do counselling. And so, and that's what she wants to do. And although it's not an instant change, it's not straight away, because I'm not saying, oh yeah, I just throw everything up in the air and go and do something new. That's not realistic. We've got bills to pay. We've got, things, we're adults with our responsibilities. But it's going back to that idea of having that, where are you pinpointing the arrow and where's it going to land? So she's got a very clear idea of, where it's going to go. And I think like those emotions and that heartfelt connection, it's listening to your gut and following that gut wisdom and that inner tuition as well of, well, what is holding me back? What's not serving me? And what will help me show up better for me, better for my kids, and better for my family. Like, I think for me, when I was like riddled with guilt, saying, so I knew that I wanted to retrain in coaching, and it meant I had to send Hugo to nursery and half a morning so that I could do this course. Oh my goodness, the guilt that I had. And I was like, I don't know if I should be doing this. Like, this is not okay. Like, and people would say to me, like, oh, he's only small once. Like, you need to enjoy those days. I'm like, and I do, I really do. And I loved those days that I had with him. And it was like this crossroads, right? And if you think of like airplanes in the sky, there are between like 8,000 to 20,000 flight paths crossing in the sky at one time. And it felt like that. It was like, oh my God, there's all these flight paths that are going on. And if I don't put him in the nursery for half a day, then I won't be able to do that. But that thing, like doing that course, is going to light me up. It's going to change how I feel about work, because I'm not going to be pissed off with going to work. I'm not going to have that resentment. Like, I'm going to be doing something that is aligned to my values, something that I believe in. And I knew, like I now know, reflecting back, that I know my strengths. I know I am a very purpose-driven person, and I know that about myself now. So I need to have a job that is aligned to my purpose and my values in order for me to be able to show up and be amazing at it. I didn't want him, my son, growing up with a mum that kept saying, like, I hate work, I don't want to go to work. What mindset am I giving him, So that guilt, I had to really deal with that and decide to change that narrative of, okay, yes, I do feel like this. It is going to be there. I can't change that. It's like that idea of being in a boat, and those emotions are always going to be swimming around you, like in the iceberg, right? They're there, they're under the surface. You can't get rid of them, but you can quiet them down. And you can decide, okay, well, I'm going there and I'm just going to kind of quiet those down. So that guilt would surface up. Of course it would. But then the story that I was able, and the belief I gave myself was, but I'm going to, at the end of this, I will be a qualified coach. I'll be doing a job that I enjoy going to. I will be probably a calmer, nicer mum. I'll be a better wife. And hopefully the whole idea was that I'll then be able to help other people. That's what I really wanted to do. So I think that's where that heartfelt comes from. Like, you've just got to do a bit of work on your inside.
It reminds me of a quote by Jordan Peterson. It's one of my favourite quotes, which is, it's your moral responsibility to go after your dreams.
Cool.
And I was like, moral responsibility?
Yeah,
what do you mean by that?
Big, isn't it?
That's big, yeah, that's too much, surely. And then he went on to explain, he said, well, what do you want? Do you want to live your optimal life with your family, your children, or do you want to live in depression for your family and your children?
Oh my
goodness. He said, so what example are you setting to the people around you, your family and your children? He said, so if you don't break through that barrier, it's not just the impact on your children, it's the impact on you, but it's also who you are as a human, how you're going to show up.
Yeah.
Because if you don't go down that path and you're depressed and you're frustrated and you're angry, he said, that's how you're going to be with your family and your children.
Agree. I wholeheartedly believe in that. And oh my goodness, I can't remember the gentleman who wrote the book, but there's a really beautiful book that I've been reading. It's called 4,000 Weeks. And he said he's kind of calculated we've got about 4,000 weeks of our life. So what are you going to do with it? You know, what are you going to do with those? What do you really want to do? Like, and for me, I really wanted, I guess, like, I suppose this goes back to my role models, like my mum, where she was the most amazing streamstress, is that the right word? Streamstress.
Something like that.
She was very good at the sewing machine, and she used to make all my clothes. She had a sewing machine in the little cupboard upstairs. And then when my dad left, she went and worked in a care home. And I look back and I'm like, Mum, like, you were amazing. Like, she used to, when she first got my dad, she would tell me stories how she would make teddy bears to sell on the market. Like, she was so creative. And that's the gift she gave to me. Like, she was such a creative woman. Always came up with the most amazing pet names, you know? Like, she was that mum that was just beautifully creative. And then to go and work in a care home, I was just like, looking back, I'm so sad for her because she could have set up her own business and probably made money doing something that she really loved and that brought her joy. And that actually makes me feel really sad thinking about that, because she had to earn money. She'd become a single mom. My dad had left. And she probably didn't have the space or capacity to think, how can I work and earn money doing something I love? She had done it, but what was the blocker? Like, what stopped her going there? I think she just thought, oh my God, I've got to earn money. And that's, you know, she wasn't academic. She was creative. So I won, you know, I've never had that conversation with her, but to think that she worked all those years doing a job that I'm not sure that lit her up. I never saw her skipping out the door. And don't get me wrong, I have bad days. I don't skip to work every day. Yay. But I go back to my values, my purpose of why I'm doing things. And when it came back to, my manager told me I'm going to be taking, she was going to retire. It's going to be an opportunity for you. Do you want to do 5 days? Like, Hugo's going to be starting school. Do you want to do 5 days? And I was like, oh my gosh, it was those flight paths again. All of those moments of like, oh my goodness, what path do I take? And I was really lucky to get selected on this program called Women in Defence Mentoring Program. And interestingly, it's quite an interesting story, you had to apply for it. Again, that confidence crept in of like, oh, I'm just this part-time mum that works with all these really clever people. So I'm going to have to make my application amazing. And they'd ask for it, do it in the most creative way you want. So I mocked a podcast. And I have a very good friend, Ali Murphy, who has an incredible podcast. And she's a voice actress. And I was like, Ali, do me a favour and pretend to be this podcast host. Here's a script. This is what I want you to say. This is what we're calling the show. And I mocked up this very short podcast where I got her to basically answer the questions that they wanted you to put in the application form. Anyway, we recorded it. I was like, oh my God, Ali, I loved that. I absolutely loved it. She was like, were you reading the script? And I was like, yeah. She was like, I couldn't have taught, like, you were so good. And I was like, was I? She was like, you were so good at that. I was like, well, because it had come from the heart. Like, obviously I was sharing what I'd come, but I got a buzz for it. I was like, oh, I like this. Anyway, submitted the application form, got a mentor, and she has been fundamental as well. So talking about heartfelt connections, like connecting with the right people to help you unlock these is really important too. And Ella, my mentor, I got paired. So my question was like, I don't know how to do this whole work, mothering and career thing. Like I felt like I was finding my flow, but now my son's about to start school. My manager's about to retire. There's going to be an opportunity. Like, well, what do I do? So I've spent weeks working with Ella around, am I in comfort, like a comfort space? Like, where am I at? What do I do? And it, going through all those emotions. And I actually went, no, I'm not going to do it because it doesn't light me up in the way that I want it to. And what I'm going to go and do instead is start a podcast. Because I was able to know what was right. And I'm lucky that my husband has taken a chance on me and has said, okay, well, give it a go. Let's see how you get on. And it's incredible. Like, I love it. Like, it fills all the things that the paid job wasn't giving me. And so, yeah. And actually going back to full-time work when my son started school, I don't know how I'd have juggled that. Like pickups, 3:00, that's a whole nother thing as well. So, yeah, juggling with all of that, like it doesn't stop. I think even though you might do some of this work when you're initially returning, that's the other thing why I love talking to women that just one step ahead, because it's like, no one told me about this craziness when they start school either. I don't know if you felt that, but it was like...
He starts in September.
Oh, he starts in September. Yeah. Let me know how that goes. But yeah, that's a whole kind of another thing as well. It's an ongoing journey.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, what you shared about your story there, is that I feel like whether it's intuition or life or I don't know what it is, I don't some sort of guidance, you were pulled to create a mock podcast to achieve something else. But it's almost like, I don't know, life or coincidences pulled you in that direction to help you realise that wasn't the thing, but this was the thing.
It's crazy, right?
And I see that sort of thing happening all the time. And this is why so much more now I just lean into intuition.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the more I lean into it, it might take me on a direction and then realise that wasn't the thing, and actually it was supposed to take me over here, which I never would have got to there
if you hadn't have taken that path.
Yeah, I'm just so you link. I mentioned about this business idea a few moments ago. Like, I needed to go through that process to get the no to realise what I actually want.
Yeah.
And it's but if I hadn't have gone through that process, I wouldn't have got the clarity. And I speak to my coach a lot about that now, which is, he's like, how are you feeling? He messaged me this morning, how are you feeling? I'm like, clear, confident. Like, I needed to go through that for the last month or two. So it's really interesting. So it's like when you're seeking, because it's quite often if you say what's your purpose or what's the thing that lights you up, you don't always know.
And it can change.
It can change. It changes over time.
Yeah.
And you can lean into it, but then life will kind of like knock you in a direction.
Well, it's all those flight paths. There's so many options.
Yeah, you have to, because sometimes I think that's where I know there's a bit of a crisis for younger men of what am I going to do with this life? And there's now so many options, and therefore it leads into a level of procrastination of I don't know what to do, don't know where to go. Like, I had that for a long time as well, and you kind of have to just start trying stuff, which you kind of lead intuition. By the way, you mentioned about journaling earlier. One of the most transformative things is to journal, get it all out, get it written down. You start to figure things out. Yeah.
And you can journal in so many different ways. It's like creative journaling, which is on my to-do list. I need to start trying to do it. But where you can't, like, you'll be able to do this because you'll have colours all around your house, I'd imagine. But you get like some paint and you pick a colour that you're really drawn to and you just smear it like down your page. And then you can get a piece of paper from your day. So whether could be anything. Might have been something that's come through the post that's really grabbed you, or the other day we went somewhere and we got wristbands. So like I've saved that. I'm going to do like the little wristband. But it could be something that's from your day and then a quote from your day. So you can either, write that, or you could cut letters out, like do that almost like just having that creative process to slow your brain down and start thinking. And then you write that kind of quote down. And you can do like a blind drawing as well, which is where you look at something you're drawing and you don't take your eye off the object. So again, it's all to do with like your brain and your subconsciousness. But so you can, if you're not really a righty type of person and you want to do something a bit more creative, then there are other ways. And there's loads of different types of journaling that you can do as well. Like there are books out there with journaling prompts. ChatGPT, I mean, there's a good thing that they can do for you is you can ask ChatGPT to give you some journaling questions. Although, that's probably the limit of where it goes, doesn't it, in terms of it won't be able to solve things for you. But I have asked it in the past, like for journaling questions. The only thing is it doesn't obviously know, like it can't respond to your emotion or your feeling. That's its limitations, but it could give you some questions. And that's no different to probably getting a book with some journaling questions in. But I do love the idea of just the free writing. That's the one I do. And a friend told me how she does one where she never takes the pen off the page. Okay. I haven't tried that.
Okay.
But she'll just write without taking the pen off.
Interesting. So next on Shine, we've got Navigate. So we've got
Intention. So S-H-I.
Oh, sorry if I missed that.
Yeah, intention.
Sorry. Yes, intention.
We've kind of gone over intention a little bit, but it's exactly what you were sharing with your value. So obviously we know where we're going. We're looking at our emotions that are going on there, and we're now going to go forward with intention. So like you did with your health, once you've got that, you've got your guiding compass. So we're now going to go forward with intention. So I imagine, or what I find when I'm doing coaching, is that a lot of people do not know their values.
I'd never thought about it until becoming a parent and having a coach and having to someone directly ask, like, what are your values? And I'm like, I've got no idea what you're about.
Yeah, isn't it? Not now you have them. Do you think like it's weird that people don't have them?
I think it's that awareness piece because I don't think someone often, unless you're put in a situation where you need to have values. Like, let's just say if you knew your purpose when you're younger, or you're very lucky to find it out, let's just say you're a Premier League footballer. So, and you want to be the best striker you possibly can be. Well, to be that, because you've got an objective or a vision, then you can have values that align to it, because those values are the things that I do. If you look at a great player, maybe they eat in a certain way, they train in a certain way, they turn up in a certain way. But the problem is, when I was talking about a lot of until you're clear on the vision for your life and you're a little bit drifting, which often people are because they're trying to figure things out, it's hard to align a value to it. So, for example, it's so funny having a health as a value, because the amount of partying I did up until I was about 30, my biggest value probably would have been like when I can go out and get high at the weekend. Like, that's probably like I was earning money and I was partying. That was my value. I was like, well, it wasn't even a value. That was just a thing that I did. That was my life. I loved it for that time. But that doesn't align to my life today. So it's interesting, because I don't feel like until you've got a vision for the life that you want, you can't start aligning values. I think those have to go. There has to be an order.
Which is exactly why you do that self-awareness, and then you look in those emotions, and then you can start really exploring what your values are to help you with that.
Yeah.
But I do think underneath those values, I think even for younger people, they are really important, because it does help you make decisions so much easier. So I think I never ask that question, and I have, and I've experienced this with people I coach, that they're often, when I ask about that values, and it's often a lot of those early work, like when I'm working with somebody one-on-one, the values comes in really early, because without knowing those, and they do change, and I think that's why it's okay to say they change. And I don't often really like the idea of just getting like, I don't know if you've ever seen like value cards where you have like a deck of cards and then you pick.
No, I think it's such a deeply personal piece of work.
And you can't just go, oh, off that tick list. Because what you'll do is you'll go, well, I would like to be this and this and this. And we could have the same value. So one of my values is fun. But just saying that word can, for you, well, if I say fun, what comes up for you when I say fun?
Well, I mean, which Simon are you talking to about? I mean, are you talking to
20-year-old Simon.
Yeah, well, that means I'm out in the club, I'm listening to music, so I'm living that life.
Yeah.
If you ask me now to sit down and have dinner with my wife, that's fun.
Yeah.
Like as in uninterrupted, like a glass of wine with my wife, that sounds like fun to me.
That's fun.
That's a great moment.
Interestingly, because it's one of my value, the way I interpret it, fun for me is that I will be silly and laugh every day. At some point in every day, I want to have that moment of where I've laughed and shared a moment with my family where we've laughed and had some fun. So 3 very different interpretations of fun.
Yeah, actually, now you've explained it like that. Oh gosh, I mean, me and Logan were rolling around on the floor laughing at each other this morning. But I don't see, that's just how we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there are some days where if I've got like a big piece of work to do, or if, he's been up all night and we've both woken up on the wrong foot, like especially this happened the other morning when he'd got into bed with me, so I think he must have had a nightmare or something, and he'd got into bed and so when he's in the bed, it's a terrible night's sleep. Sometimes I will try and get into his bed, but then he'll follow me in. And I'm like, great, now we're in a tiny single bed and there's 2 of us. Let's just go back in the other bed. At least then there's more space. And he woke up and he went, Mummy, what day is it? And I was like, oh, whatever it was a weekday. He's like, was it school day? I was like, yeah. He was like, oh, I hate school. And I was like, oh, man, like, I don't want to deal with this. And so, we dragged ourselves downstairs and he was just moaning. He was obviously tired, whatever was going on for him. I was also thinking like, great, I've had a bad night's sleep. I've got to deliver this huge piece today. Like, this is not how I wanted to start this day. And then I just have to catch myself and go, okay, well, this isn't fun. And this is not my values. This is not what I'm guiding myself by. You have a mindset. You have a choice of how you want to show up. And then I'll just do something like get the best thing. He has this dinosaur and like I just make it talk and like it just makes us then both laugh and you snap out of it and it's fine, right? So it's interesting, like you say, like that's kind of like what you do, but for me it's a value because I want to make sure I live by that every day. I want to show up on this planet by having some form of fun every day. And I'm not sure if we do laugh every day. So that's why I'm intentionally want that to happen. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you have health, whereas I don't have health, but I will every day try and do like a Peloton or a walk. I'll try and eat healthy. So it's really the values are so important to each person. And is it about, it is the way that it's that guiding compass and you need to decide what that looks like. And you can't just pick out of a deck of cards, like those lists. I'm not a big fan of those because I think you will subconsciously choose things how you want to show up, how you want to be perceived, because that's your ego, isn't it? Going, well, I want to be, I don't know, courage and like I want to show up as these things, but what does that mean to you? And is that what you really want? So I think there's some really deep conversations to be had around values.
I've just written down a 4th value.
Oh, yeah?
I'm just trying to see how it looks and it feels, which I've written fun. And then immediately after that, I've written joy. Just trying to look at how does that sit with me.
Love that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have, there isn't a definitive number. I like 3 just because I love the number 3. Like I always do 3.
3
power
feels
of
better.
3.
3 feels better. But I'm just going to leave it there and see.
Yeah.
But that's the intention or that's the intuition piece, which is like, well, let's just see how it manifests. If it keeps coming up, maybe I'll see that word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
And I think for me, it's guiding. Like when I was having the therapy, he asked me to write my obituary. When I was like, whoa, that's dark.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it was homework. He was like, okay. So I went and I did it in a very journaling way. Like I just wrote what I wanted. And then I closed the book and went to therapy the next week and read it to him and cried. I just sobbed because one of the things that I would have wanted people to say about me is that she's adventurous. And that probably goes back to my core value of why I went and did cabin crew, despite my dad saying, you have not studied for your postgraduate and got all this way to go and be a trolley dolly. I was like, no, but I really want to go and do it.
Adventure, travel.
Yes, adventure, travel, fun. And it was all of those things. I'd actually gone and done a gap year the year before and just went traveling and then came back and I was like, I've not had enough of this. I mean, I was in my late 20s. I just had this whole like thing where I was like, I'm not living. It was that gut intuition. I was like, I was a careers advisor. And I was like, this isn't right. Like something wasn't right. Like it wasn't obviously living what I wanted. And I wanted to do all these like adventures and journeys. And I did. And they were phenomenal, just incredible. And leaving that behind has been really hard for me. And becoming a parent where I felt so hard, particularly because I breastfed for 2 years. So I was...
That's tough.
Yeah. And I loved it because I just loved the connection I had with my son. But equally, I was excited to have that opportunity where I could probably go and do things because I had to do bedtime every night because I would feed him to sleep. So it was this, well...
That's hard.
Yeah. And at the time, looking back, like, it's just what I did. Like, I didn't. But I remember when I went back to work, they asked me to go to a leadership meeting and it was an overnight. And I was like, well, I can't do that. And the guy said to me, why? I was like, oh, because I'm still nursing my son. And he's like, isn't he like 18 months? And I was like, yep. And he was like, hasn't he got teeth? I was like, yeah. Like, uncomfortable. Why are you asking me all these questions?
Gosh, that is not questions a leader or a manager should be asking.
And then he went, but doesn't it really hurt? I was like, oh my goodness.
I mean, this is way past.
This is not okay.
This is a HR issue, I think.
Right? And I'd just come back. So I was like, how do I navigate? Like now, I'd love to go back to myself and be like, you tell him it's none of his business. This is how it is. And that is why. Like, I am a breastfeeding mother and no, I cannot go on an overnight stay for a leadership. I will not be attending. And close that conversation down. But I was in, I guess, this kind of like people pleasing, like explaining myself, like, no, it doesn't. Like, and then those feelings come in of like, oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing? Like, how do I be a mother and be in this team? You know, how do I do all of this? Anyway, needless to say, I didn't stay over. But it was being comfortable with the uncomfortable and then going back to that fun and joy, like finding fun and joy in those moments I would have where it looked very different. It looked so different from being able to climb a mountain or, you know, whatever it was that used to do that.
You have to redefine it because my wife often says, she's just said, look, when we have a conversation and we get a bit more deep, she's like, I've become everything I wanted to be as a mummy. There's also a level of losing her sense of self on that journey.
Massive.
And then, you know, your call to adventure, you know, I traveled a lot when I worked on cruise ships.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I know all about, you know, the excitement of doing that. And I chose that over university in the end. And that adventure you get from the travel or the whatever your call is, you know, with my wife, she's got her thing, but she's lost a sense of herself. She's lost her adventure as well.
Yeah.
And that adventure is something as simple as me and her being romantic and having our date nights and those sorts of things. Just all of that, you lose so much of yourself as a parent. You get the most amazing thing in the world to be a parent, But that old version of you slowly
Gone.
goes.
So true. It's that matrescence.
Yeah.
You go through this whole change like you do when you go through teenage years. You completely change yourself. Your whole identity has changed, completely changed. You know, wanting to do that job is not the same. It's not the same thing. And so for me, that fun and that adventure, I couldn't in the same way, and still can't in the same way, because there's restrictions around annual leave, money. You know, there you have to go back to this, you know, self, who am I going to be now? Because I did completely lose myself. And being cabin crew, I don't know if it's the same with the cruises, but when you're crew, that's such a strong identity.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people even say to me now, like, about, and you know, I get this from the mums and at the school gates, and I've heard comments around like, oh, you always like look so presentable, like your hair's always so nice, or and like as if I get, and I could be like, well, is that an attack? Like, what's going on there? And someone said to me like, oh, you know, and sometimes I will look a state. Like sometimes I've literally just got off the Peloton and I've had to run down and I look an absolute state. But my self-identity is ingrained in me from my mum, because my mum was always pristine. So there's that. And then being cabin crew. I had a whole day on how to do my hair and makeup. You used to turn up to the crew room, and if your nails and makeup were not a certain way, you would need to make sure they were before you got on that flight. Like, that was my job, was to make sure that I adhered to the company's grooming standards. That's what it's called, grooming. So, and it's changed a little bit now, but there were standards of how you looked and you presented yourself. So that's in me, like that's ingrained in me. That's how I choose to show up. And this might even probably be a value, but I feel better when I've like brushed my hair and I got a lippy on. So imagine how I felt when I had a baby and I could not do that. Like, I used to hate my husband because he, in my eyes, is a very handsome man, and he would leave the house looking beautiful. And there was no way I could make myself look any like feel better. Do you know what I mean? Like, I hadn't maybe had a shower. Like, those early days were hard. Yeah. And like, even now when I do have to rush out the house, there is a bit of me that's twitching where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing this, I'm going to the school run and I've got my sweaty gym gear on. This doesn't feel okay. But it goes back to that fun. Well, at least I know I can kind of like laugh about it with myself. But that whole identity, that fun it has to look different now. But it's not to say that on my vision and my identity that one day I will, you know, I look forward to having adventures in a different way with Hugo this time. You know, I'm going to do that.
And something I think about a lot, and I think this is very relevant to this moment, is that this moment will pass. So like when you're thinking about going back to work and there will be difficulty actually, or, you know, with Hugo, he doesn't want to go to school, these moments will pass. So like none of these situations are permanent, although it feels so permanent at the time, but the children change.
And that's quite sad, isn't it?
It's constant. So the things are changing constantly. So nothing is permanent in this situation. And it's just,
true.
I've been able to reflect on just while we've been talking, is that I feel like probably in time you get that freedom back again, but it will be very different, because you're going to get it back again at some stage as they grow. And then you're going to be missing this stage.
100%.
And actually maybe you return back to who you were because you have that freedom, but like now all of your contexts are different and you're going to miss this. Humans are wired in a very strange way where you want the thing you don't have.
Yeah. And then it's the stories that we tell ourselves as well, isn't it? So I look back on those like younger days and I've created my own narrative and my own story of what that looks like for me. Whereas if you ask my husband, he'll have his own story and narrative. There are stories that we tell ourselves about those. So, and this again is where that, coaching can really help, because that can sometimes hold you back. Because I could sit here and talk about how horrendous my return was, and it kept me small, and I didn't go on to do anything else, and I could kind of really tell a pity party story about it. Oh, then I had to go and send my son to nursery an extra day because I was made to do this course, or it's how you tell that story and that narrative and how you live that. And we have opportunities. It goes back to that choice of deciding how you want to share that story and tell that story, because our brains will just keep repeating that. So you can either make it a really positive or really negative. It's like with my mum, I could say, well, actually, it was really awful. It's the way how you want to reframe and reshape those stories, and they will look different for us. It's a bit like when if you and I were to go on a train, we've got very different interests. So we'd get to the end of the journey and I might say like, oh, did you see all of those horses in the field? And you'd be like, no, I was looking at all the beautiful trees and the architecture, because that's what interests you and that's what interests me. And so at the end of the journey, you could be like, well, I didn't see any architecture. It was horrendous. Where I could be like, oh, well, I did see what I saw and it was great. So you can decide how you tell your stories.
That's the intention.
That's the intention.
Yeah.
And you can rewrite those. That's what's really cool, right? Like you can decide. Like I was so scared I was going to be my mum, but then actually reframing, being intentional about how I wanted to then be and show up. Yeah, it's that choice.
Yeah, I love intention. It's a great one.
It's a good one, isn't it? And do you know what? Life is pretty shit. Being a parent has pretty shit moments.
There's a lot of shit moments. I mean, quite literally as well. But
quite literally. Yeah. It's like when you asked me about like the breastfeeding, like that was hard. Yeah, but I chose to do that. And, and I loved it. But I look back with that memory rather than the memory of, probably at the time, I'm sure there were moments where I was like, oh, I don't want to be doing this again. I don't know how many nights there are in 2 years, but, for the whatever ninth that was, I don't want to do it again. But when it came to the last day, when he wasn't bothered, I went down and cried. I was so sad because, like you were saying, though, I knew the moment was going to pass, but it didn't mean that there were some days where I didn't want it to happen. And that goes, there's a phrase, isn't there, of this too shall pass.
Yeah, that's it. This too shall pass.
This too shall pass. And I hear a lot of mums say that when they're going through a hard time. And then I always say back, but so will the really joyful, beautiful times. And life there's always going to be crappy times. Even when, like I didn't think the going to school thing was going to be hard. People get saying to me, like, oh, you're going to have like loads of your time back. And no. And actually the challenges that came and like the emotions that came from the return, like it was nuts. Like emotion for him, because it was a whole new thing that he was August baby. So he's the youngest in his year.
Oh, bless him.
Like he was not ready for that. I was not ready for that. Again, you'll see correlation in the timing of the podcast. I started putting it together when he started school because I had that void in my life where I didn't have him on the 2 days. So I used to have him on 2 days. He was in nursery 3 days and I'd work on those 3 days. I didn't have him around me. Like, so I went through another who am I now? Because I was mum and I looked after him on those days. So it's ever, ever evolving. And I think you're constantly redefining what success looks like for you and just, constantly it's a constant journey.
Constant journey, constant change, constant growth.
Isn't it?
But intention allows you to navigate, which we're about to come on to, because things are changing constantly.
Yeah.
You can navigate a new path or the right path. And I think that's leaning into intuition, let's talk about it's navigate.
Navigate. So navigate for me is navigating this crazy, wild journey of where the motherhood and career collide. But we've talked about having your purpose taking off. But man, I'm living and breathing that. It is not easy. And it comes back to this kind of societal expectation of women can have it all, because obviously there's been so much work done for us in the past where we are now really fortunate to be able to have all these rights and we're able to work and we want to work. There is research out there that shows us that she was Dr. Giselle Goodwin, who I interviewed on my podcast, who has done the research to say work is good for us. And if you've done any reading around with Dan Pink on Drive, having purpose gives us the motivation. It is good for us. Great, tick. So we know that work is good for us. But doing that and being a mum and going back to my point of like the is it pressure? But that pressure as a woman to look good as well. I think, it's like $1 billion industry, like the makeup and body industry. There is pressure on us to still turn up looking okay. There's all of these elements that can lead to burnout. Because if you're trying to juggle all of these things, like the work, being a mum,
It's just
the
too
looking
much.
great, yeah. And so, yes, we know that the work is good for us. And if we're doing work that lights us up, like that's incredible, that's great, that's all of the stuff that we've just been talking about. But then it is this whole navigating these paths. And it might be, like I've shared with you, many of my clients will be like, okay, I know now the intention, I know where I want to go, but I've still got to do this job because I've still got to help put food on the table. That's an expectation from society that now we've got the rights to work, we should be working, and the cost of living. Very, very common now for both parents to be working. So you're still doing that, and maybe you're doing a night school. It's a lot. And I interviewed the UK's leading expert on burnout, and it wasn't until the end of that conversation that I went, shit, I had burnout last year. And I described that basically I had this chest infection and this cot, and it would not go away, Simon. Like, I kid you not, I had it for at least, it was like 6 to 9 months. And people would see me. I had it over the Christmas, and then I remember seeing a friend in like February. He was like, are you still coughing? And I was like, yeah, I can't get rid of this. The doctor sent me for chest x-rays. They were putting me on antibiotics. Nothing. Couldn't work out what was wrong with me. It was burnout. So our bodies, it goes back to that intuition, like we need to listen to our bodies, because if we're burnt out, it will show up. Our bodies will say, I'm in pain. Like if you've got a rotting tooth, you'll get a toothache. Your tooth will tell you, like, I'm in pain. And our bodies will do something to say, I can't, this is too much. And I had exactly that. I had that burnout. And so I've learned, I'm still learning. I don't think you ever stop. And this one's a huge one for me, is boundaries. So putting in those boundaries in place. And that's hard. Like, I don't think anyone taught me how to do this until I'm learning this now. But those boundaries, if you can learn how to be able to put those into place, like being able to say no, and that no is a full sentence. Like, that could be pretty powerful. You don't need to explain to anyone. You can just say no. But again, you can see how these are all starting to weave in, because if you know your values and you be guided by those and your purpose, then it can help you see where the balance is and how you can do it. And how, it also starts touching on how can you help that dynamic in the family? Because I don't know about you and your wife, but my husband and I, when we became parents and then we had the child, I think he thought also all the work that comes with the child also sits with me, because I wonder if that's what he saw growing up. Is that the belief that he has? Is it a belief that a lot of men have, because that's how it used to be? Dad would go to work and Mum would look after the house. And in fact, I don't know if you're watching Race Around the World at the moment. It's so good. But I sat down last night to watch that, and there's a mum, she's 61, she's on it with her son who's 20 or 21. And literally it tugged in my gut, because she was saying, she basically openly said on the cameras, I feel like I've never done something really meaningful and purpose in the last 20 years. And she's been a stay-at-home mum out of choice, but she was openly saying, I've never brought in any money to the household. I have some guilt around that. And then their son was saying, oh yeah, Mum loves doing all the housework. I mean, I'm brushing a bit of a brush over this. You'll have, don't quote me, but what I took away from it was he was saying, I don't know, Mum, other than always looking after the house and caring for us. But her version was, I've done nothing that's been of value and purpose. So that navigating, has she been able to navigate that and have those kind of conversations and talk about those tasks? Her son has seen, it'd be really interesting, wouldn't it? Was that the husband's view of how they should be as a married couple? Sounds like that's not what she wanted. And then the son's grown up seeing that. Is he going to have that? Is that what he's going to expect out of a marriage? Because that could then have some conflict, because she might want to work or might have to work. So how's that going to impact him? Is he going to feel like a failure if his wife then has to work, because that's not what he's grown up with? You can start seeing how that inner child starts to really play out, and society's expectations as well of what's expected of us. So I think in this crazy world we're living in, it's really hard for I can talk about this because it has happened in my experience, is that my husband, I think, has really found it hard to work out where he sits in the relationship in terms of the household chores and looking after Hugo. I took all that time to look after Hugo. We were in lockdown. He didn't really have to do anything else other than his job. But then when I went to work, I couldn't do all of what I was doing and then pick up the job. We needed to divide things up a little bit. And I think for him, that was a bit of a so now I've got to do some extra stuff too. Whereas I'm sure, it would have been easier probably for me to carry on as I was. But that dynamic changes, right? When I then went to work, things had to change up. And on reflection, maybe thinking about those boundaries and burnout, if I was to do it again, it would be okay, well, giving him some more responsibility with the child or some of the chores. I just took them on because I thought that's what was expected of me. So there was no conversations around the balance.
I think you've ended by saying conversation. So really I always think about it's the communication.
Oh, yeah.
And what happens is, mothers all often just take on the responsibility and continue doing the thing.
Yeah.
And it's not until you sit down and actually have a conversation, try and work out where each other's up to. And I often say to my wife, you've got to delegate. You've got to tell, because...
But we don't want to.
Yeah, because it's like I can't read your mind on what needs to get done.
So
and also,
true.
I can't read your mind to the standard of what you want something done. So I might be fine with the hoovering being done once a week. She wants it done once every other day. I've got no idea of that until you sit down and communicate to me, I need you to do this.
Oh, yes.
So yeah. I think all of this comes back down to, because I think about this a lot, which is as a family, you're now playing roles, right? And there are jobs that have to happen. Just like if I think about it almost like as a business term, right? So therefore, if there, let's just say I'm using hoovering as a flippant example, is that if that needs to be done, okay, cool. Well, how often does it need to be done? How does it need to be done? All those sorts of things. And what's your expectation around it? Yeah. Now, because now we've had those conversations, I'm like, okay, I don't expect you to be doing it all the time, but I also need to know your expectation of how often it needs to be done. So anyway, so I do some of the hoovering now. After dinner, I just come put the hoover around. I'm like, okay, so now I get it. I understand there is an expectation around that. And it's the thing, it's those sorts of things will always come back to you communicating and working out what are the roles as a family.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would just expect these are your or a woman's job.
Just take them on.
Yeah, and that's it.
And you're so right. Like communication, no one can read anyone's mind. So there's a really lovely. I love this idea. It's not an idea. It's what it is. So abracadabra. The word abracadabra means I create as I speak.
Okay.
So it's literally I'm creating as I'm speaking. So the words that I'm using to describe things, this goes back to when I was talking about, those stories that you tell yourself, the narratives, you're creating what you speak. So if you are not able to exactly that, like communicate that world that you are expecting and being able to create that, then no one's going to know. But I think when you're in that fog of that burnout and trying to do everything, it can be really hard to often lift your head out of the sandpit and have those conversations. And sometimes they can be really tough conversations. But being able to maybe see, I've heard of this before as well, where some people say, well, think of the things that you enjoy doing and maybe do the chores that you like. I mean, I don't really like doing any of them, so that doesn't really work for me. But it is about that communication and that, creating that world as you speak, using those words.
I think the big thing is you're a team. You've got to be a team.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to be a team and you've got to be on the same team. Right.
Yeah.
Not a versus. That's the only way I think a real marriage or a long-term partnership can work, is you've got to be on the same team. Now, your team, success for this team is a happy family. Happy is just a terrible... It's not happy.
Happy triggers with me. I'm not a big fan of the word happy.
I shouldn't have said the word happy. A family that's living in I was going to say harmony. That's not even work because right. I don't know. What's the goal? The goal is that the family has, I'm struggling for the right words. I'm trying to think. What's the goal? The goal is that the family, you are trying to live in a harmonious way. You are trying to get the best for your children so they have a schedule and they go to sleep, they eat the right food, or you do what you can, but whilst managing a very heightened and emotional situation.
Yeah, we're all just trying to do our best
Everyone's
and enjoy the ride
best.
that we're on, aren't we?
So that's what I think about, is that you've got to be 100 and something, a crazy number, into the family. We're all there to help this family move forward. Like all within our roles. You're trying to, So that's why you've got to be a team. And the team is leading a family, growing a family together.
And even teams have team coaching. So that's what I have, like in the business that I work in.
Oh, they have coaching and they have conflict. Then you're navigating everything, and they have roles, they have responsibilities, they have all of these things.
It's just the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like there's this ideal of how, it should be and it should play out, and it's always going to have turbulence and it's always going to have thrills. That is life. But the gift that we have is our being in control of our mindset and that intention of how we want to show up. And I think if we try and live by that and live by our values, then everyone in the team, we're all trying to thrive, aren't we? I guess for me, and I think everyone's definition of what they want from their family is probably different. But for me, I love to see all the players in the team thriving, just not surviving.
Thriving. That's probably what I was trying to find. Thriving. Yeah,
thriving.
That was it. That's the word I was looking for.
Because you
want to see
growing.
each other thriving. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're always growing and we're always developing that. Like that doesn't stop, even for us as parents, right? Like we're trying to then...
This is the biggest growth area, I think, of your life.
Right? And the only way, I was trying to describe my journey to somebody the other day, and I was saying, at work, like I feel like I've been this bulb underground. So since I've returned from work, I was probably this like wilting flower, and a bit like a tulip, and they kind of like go back in the ground. And I've had 2 years of being nurtured and nourished, and I've taken time, and I'm okay with that. And then I'm ready now to like come out the soil. Because we're always going to go through those journeys, always. And the reason why, and no one ever really asked me why I always have like a little flamingo to do with Mama's Flightpath. So obviously Mama's Flightpath is around the career and motherhood colliding and then the purpose taking off. That's the whole. And it was the song Kiss the Sky from the film Wild Robot. I heard that and I was like, that for me, I left that cinema with my son and I went, yeah, I'm going to start this podcast and this is what it's going to be about. Like it was that intuition, like that gut feeling, because I think everyone can be brave and touch the sky. Like you need to listen to the song if you haven't heard it, but it's just the most beautiful lyrics. And it was this idea that when a flamingo has a chick, it loses its pink feathers and they turn white because all the nutrients go to the chick. Okay. And it's not until the chick is older and a little bit more independent that the mama starts getting her pink feathers back. So that's why you'll see, like in Mama's Flightpath, I use a lot of pink. I've never been a fan of pink, but then I had this story about the flamingos and I'm like, well, I resonated so much.
That really resonates.
It's just so true. And whilst like it's taken a long time for those feathers to come back, and I'm not sure if they will ever all come back, nor do I probably want them to all come back, because this is my journey and my story, and I will always be nurturing my son. So there's always going to be some white feathers in there, but it's only been in the last year that those pink has started to come through. And then following my intuition and following like my purpose and what lights me up, they've started to come through a little bit neon, like they're really coming through. And so no one's asked about the flamingo, and it's kind of like my own little story that I hold and remind myself that, we all do. We all get our pink feathers back. Just sometimes take a little bit longer than others.
That's a perfect analogy. It's
a
perfect
cute,
analogy. It's a cute, but also a very perfect analogy.
Because it's nature. It's like nature displaying exactly how it is, isn't it?
It's exactly that. I wonder, as you get older, the children get older, everything matures, you continue to thrive. Maybe you don't go pink again. Maybe you said there was a neon colour. Maybe you shine in a different way.
I think so.
Because you've also achieved a magnificent thing.
Yeah.
My wife sent me a Bluey quote.
I love Bluey.
And it was the Bluey parents, and she said, one day we'll be this, and we were sat there on a bench or something, reminding ourselves of what we were like, and as parents, obviously we were parents, but as the children were older, and it was, babe, we did it.
We did.
We raised great humans.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at each other, and it's just us, and we're going, oh, I miss it. Don't we want to be back there? Because
I love it. I do love it. And I think that's because that's my mindset and my intention is those days will come. I know they're going to come. But I'm just love being in these moments. I'm not saying I'm perfect or they're easy, because they're not. It's hard.
It's the hardest thing.
But they're friggin' beautiful. And like, I just feel very, very lucky to be kind of on this crazy planet. Like, I'm very grateful for the things that have come my way and the mindset that I've had and the way that I'm choosing to show up. And I think I haven't talked about this in any of it, but there is, because I think gratitude has its own place, and it probably comes under the intention, but being grateful for what you have can really help with your mindset and where you're going. And on the topic of Bluey, have you seen the episode where they talk about the farmer fable?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Oh my
maybe.
God. So this
I've seen a lot.
I've seen a lot. If you haven't, you need to go and watch this one. It's one of my favourites. I think it's actually a well-known fable, but it's in a Bluey episode. So it's, amazing how they talk about it.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say,
farm.
but share it because it's a great story.
I just love it. And since I've heard it, I've really adopted this as well. And I just love it. So there's a farmer and he has a wild horse and his wild horse goes missing and the village go, that's how unfortunate. And he's like, oh, we'll see. And then the horse comes back with 2 more wild horses and the villagers are like, oh, that's so lucky. And he's like, we'll see. His son rides one of the wild horses and the wild horse bucks him off and he breaks his leg. And the villagers go, oh, that's such bad luck. And the farmer goes, we'll see. And then the army come to take all the boys from the village to go and join the army. And the son can't go because he's got his broken leg. And the villager goes, well, that's good luck. And the farmer says, oh, well, we'll see. And so, taking you right back to when I shared my story about the car being stolen, so many people have said to me, that's awful, that's horrendous. I'm like, yeah, it is, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And as a result, actually, yes, there's been some terrible things. We've probably lost some money because we paid all that car for so long. Had some Hugo's things in it. There was loads of really crappy things about that happening to us. But actually, the positive is it was insured. We're all okay. We are not hurt. It happened to us when we were safe in our beds and they just took it. They didn't come in our house. We were okay. And we're now getting a new car and we're getting an electric one. So we're doing something a bit more positive for the environment. So, we'll see. Is that lucky? We'll see. And I'm really loved that story and I'm kind of just really embracing that. And I think it's really helping.
Interesting. I heard that story when I was doing a positive psychology course.
Oh, fun.
And so I haven't seen it as a Bluey episode.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah, please.
I love that it's in Bluey.
Yeah. Some of the things that are in Bluey are really powerful. Me and my wife cried at one of the episodes.
Which one?
It was like a sleepy time one.
Oh.
And we were watching and it was kind of like the transition of Bluey becoming being able to sleep through the night and all those things.
I've got the book of that.
Oh,
it's really
gosh, I've got shivers thinking. Oh my God, I've got shivers thinking about a children's cartoon. But it was so deep and powerful. And we were watching it. It was like, that's the transition and the growth. And we were like, oh my God,
they won't want to get in our beds.
It's so meaningful. Yeah, it's so meaningful. So that's amazing. What you're beginning to talk about is empowerment. You are the gratitude is empowering you. You are being able to be grateful for all of the things that are happening, the tough moments, the good moments. And this is the thing, this moment shall pass, but also the other view of that is let's just see. Yeah. Good things will happen, challenging things will happen. We will see.
Yeah. And it's and
that's true empowerment, isn't it?
Yeah. And empowerment can look different for different people. We can interpret it how we want. But ultimately it's what that empowerment gives you, so then that you can go and execute what it is that you want to do. So you've almost built up that knowing of who you are now, who you want to become, being guided by that compass of those values, having those heartfelt connections with yourself, with those emotions, really getting familiar with those, having that intention, navigating it, and then being empowered to actually go and do it. So whatever it is. I mean, obviously this is particularly looking at when you're returning to work. So, what are you now empowered to do? Are you going to return but retrain? Are you going to quit the job? What is it? What are you now going to do? Because with doing the return reset, and this is obviously the framework that sits in there, it's giving that space, but we don't give ourselves, and that non-judging, safe opportunity to say out loud what you might not say to anyone else, and then having that power to go and execute it.
And as someone who's been through that process,
yeah,
what do you What's your encouragement to someone to start the process?
It's not easy. It's not a matter of, oh, it's a tick list, I'll do those things and then I'll magically know what I want to go and do. It's a continuous following that inner wisdom, that gut, and just enjoying the ride. Like, there are always going to be thrills and turbulence. It's a flight path, right? The path you choose, it is a flight path. Like, it's going to have its ups and downs, but ultimately it's going to get you to a really great destination. But it is, I guess it's that really cheesy fridge magnet, isn't it, that says it's not the destination, it's the journey. And like, I guess it's a cliche, like it's a bit cringy because it is true. Like, what is the destination? You'll have micro ones along the way, right? You'll have micro milestones of where you want to go. But maybe reflecting on today's conversation, the macro goal is just that everyone's thriving, whatever that looks like today, in this moment, in this conversation. Like, it's enjoying
it's
that.
True transformation, isn't it? But that on a daily basis is just trying to take an action that your future self is going to thank you for, that you started the journey. Like, when you start off and you think about self, an unbelievably hard, we've both been through therapy, as I mentioned, and you've mentioned yours. I think everyone should go to therapy.
Oh, me too.
I genuinely think it should be
it should be an NHS thing that you're able to have.
Go to therapy. And by the way, it should be celebrated because, oh gosh, it's like, I started just thinking of it as me time. It's like, I'm going to go speak to, because there's also quite a big link between therapy and coaching. There's actually a real link between those two.
It's very similar. Well, it's the same skill set.
Yeah.
In the sense that you are not helping them solve, you're not helping them solve, like, you're using those really active listening and asking those right questions. And a lot of the training that I did was, did dip into a lot of the psychology and a lot of the therapy. There is definitely, it's hard. I think there's a bit of a grey line, and it's down to where the coach is comfortable to go. But a coach would always direct to a therapy if it was out of the water. Obviously, they go through a lot more training to deal with a lot more deeper issues. Some people say that the therapy is about looking back and that the coaching is looking forward.
That's a good maybe an interesting way.
Although I find in my coaching that it's a bit like driving a car, and sometimes you do need to check the rear mirror just to see, sometimes you might need to check in with the past, but I wouldn't go back there and start digging anything up. But the SHINE framework that I've shared with you, that is all coaching principles. But there's a place for both.
Yeah, yeah. And it's in that transformation, starting with the self, you should have both, right? And I think one of the big benefits, coming back to, like, we're talking about being empowered here, the benefit of what the coach will do and the therapist will do is they will hold up a mirror and they will offer you space. Now, I personally, I feel like it is better with a professional, because there are certain things, certainly with my coach, which he'll give me space for, and I want to share quite openly, and I don't necessarily want to do that with my wife or my best friend or whatever or whoever, like, because it's like my coach is neutral and independent, and the other people I just mentioned, they're stakeholders in my life. So I actually don't want to do it in that space.
Yeah,
you might be very fortunate with a very close friend that you can do it, but they won't be neutral, because it's like sometimes when I'm very close with my mum and I'll share a lot with my mum, but I'm like, the answer I always get from you is the most positive, wonderful, overloved, and I'm like, yeah, you're not
your biggest cheerleader,
of course, and she is, but like this view isn't neutral. Like, so it's actually really good because she's just a huge advocate and supporter, etc. That's what I feel like. You get a better view from someone else who can listen to it for the first time, give you some space to really explain it. By the way, just saying the thing out loud.
Oh my gosh, isn't that crazy?
That's just incredible.
That's
as well.
like when my manager said to me, like, what would you do if you, it was either what would you do if you had a magic wand or if you weren't afraid? And I was like, I'd have a podcast and I'd build this community. And I was like, oh, I just said that
Just
out
said it.
loud.
Yeah, and a good coach will kind of allow to ask you the question so you be reflective enough to say it out loud.
Yeah.
And then he's like, you've just declared something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, now I'm accountable to go and do it.
That's the secret, isn't it? So what I love about coaching as well is that, and I've had a lot of coaching. This is, to become a coach, I've had lots of coaching, and then I'm coaching people continuously in my work. So I've had supervision. So that's more coaching. And then my manager was a coach. I've lived and breathed coaching. That I love everything about it. But I love how you're not there to solve anyone's problems. Like if you want an opinion on something, go and grab a mentor. A mentor will give you some advice. But make sure that they have walked the path that you are walking. And I think that's what my podcast is for people. Like it's a mentoring space. Like I'm talking to professionals and other parents that can offer their wisdom and they can share their advice of how it's been for them. You have a choice of whether you listen to that, agree with it, take any of it on board. That's mentoringship. That's great. But if you really want that transformation and owning it, I think this is the difference, is where you solve your own problem, you are more likely to go through with it because it's your problem. You'll see this in kids. Have you ever done this where you've said like, you ask them a question, like I'll do this with Hugo and I'll ask him to do something, but if I tell him how he should be done, he won't do it. Like for example, like with his clothes, like, go and get your clothes on, like go and put your socks on, whatever, like goes over. But if you give them their own way of doing it, empower them to do it themselves, like, I've put them on the side for you, like your clothes on the side, like, put them on. I don't know if that's a very good example. I'm not sure if I explained that very well. But if you solve your own problem rather than someone telling you how to do it,
that's exactly
you're
how
more likely to go through it.
Yeah, a coach isn't there to give you that advice and guidance.
No. And if they are, go and grab yourself a different coach, because there are a lot of people that call themselves coaches out there. This is a big issue of mine. Probably hear me and my tone of my voice get on my soapbox. There's a lot of people out there that have done no training in coaching and say that they're a coach. Like yoga teachers are now saying they're coaches. But that's very different. If you really want that transformation, you really like what we're talking about here, go and grab yourself a qualified coach, ICF, EMCC, but they've been through the proper training. Because they shouldn't be giving you advice. Like the power is in you coming up with solving your problems, because you're more likely then to execute them. Yeah,
you have to. They're there really to ask you reflective questions, and actually just the right question. I remember one time I had a whole session with my coach, and it was on a particular problem that I was struggling with, and he just said a couple of things. It wasn't a solution, but it was a mindset, and the words. I won't tell you what the problem was, but he just said, you need to minimize this. He said, this is 1% of your life. Minimize it.
So he was giving you feedback on what he had heard. So you may not have seen that needed minimizing.
So I went into that with, this problem is 100% of my life.
But he was able to reflect back on you, shine that back, reflect it back, be the mirror and say, no, it's this.
He said, minimize it.
Minimize it.
He said, you're giving it too much time, too much space. You minimize it and restrict it to exactly what it is. And then I was like, okay, what does that mean? And over the weeks and times, I was like, okay, I'm talking about it too much. It's too much. It's on my mind too often. And then within 2 or 3 weeks, I was able just to just by not talking about it or not thinking about it, being intentional, come back to your point, I'm now empowered because it doesn't have to impact my days.
Yeah, so you're not you're not adding fuel to that feeling, giving it some space.
Rise above, okay, like in everybody's life, there are, no one's got the perfect life, right? There's always going to be something that's frustrating or difficult.
That's life,
someone at work or whatever, there's always something that's gripping you.
Of course.
But if you can reduce it, and especially we're talking about the work context, the work environment, there's going to be loads of people you don't get on with. Some people that frustrate you because you you can't get the work done, or they're, you're affecting anything. There's so much there. But if you allow it to go further than or mean more than it really is, and that's why he said you need to minimize this to what it is, because it's impacting, it's poisoning. It literally was poisoning everything else. He said, all this wonderful stuff going on, you need to reduce it, minimize it.
So you were just feeding it, weren't you?
Yeah.
And then it's like we were talking about earlier with the boat and the feelings around. If you keep giving it attention, it'll keep rising up and it'll get bigger and bigger. But if you it'll always be there, won't it?
So if you think about what that coach did for that time, if we had an hour together and I spoke for most of that hour, he listened, he gave me space.
He sounds great.
He's great. Jason Pooley. He's actually been on this podcast once before. He's coming back again as well. He's amazing.
Great.
He's an amazing guy. But he was able to hold the space and then literally just give it, wasn't advice, it was an observation, and which I was able to reflect on. Now that time together, it's worth its weight in gold, because although we had an hour, that's now freed up my energy, my mental capacity for a significant period. So that's the benefit you get.
Yeah,
and that's
it's
what a
pretty
great
amazing,
coach,
isn't
what
it?
a great coach can do.
Yeah, and I think why the podcast had lots of things to give for me, in the sense of why I thought it was good. It aligned with, my strengths and all these other things. But ultimately, why I wanted to talk about that return to work piece was because coaching is often saved for executives in the workplace. I'm really fortunate where I work for a company where it's available to everybody. So we have a group of internal coaches and anyone can have access to them, which I just think is incredible. Like, you can just go and be like, well, I'm the person that looks after it. So people come to me and be like, I want a coach, and I can just assign them to someone. How freaking amazing is that? But if you don't have that, it's really expensive. It's quite expensive. And if you've been on maternity leave, you often don't have a lot of extra income. So I wanted to do the podcast as an opportunity to hear some of all of the stuff we're talking about, speak to these people, get that out there for free, obviously have the return reset. Just the framework is on there, so at least you can start thinking about it and working it through. And then the group coaching will be a really more financially accessible way of being able to have that coaching, experiencing it. And obviously then the one-to-one is golden, but it is expensive because it is worth its weight in gold.
Look, I've really loved talking to you today, so thank you so much for your time. It's possibly the longest podcast I've
really?
recorded, so no, that's good. I could
surprise, I talk forever.
I could tell we were going to make a record today. I just thought your stories and insights were so fascinating and interesting, so it's been great. If
thank you for having me.
Interested to learn more about you and get in contact, what's the best way of doing so?
So I hang out a bit on Instagram, Mama's Flightpath. Obviously on the podcast, so it's available wherever you get your pods, and it's Mama's Flightpath. And then probably the one place I would just send everybody to would be the website, which is mamasflightpath, all one word.com. And then on there you can get the shine that we've talked through. So that's on there as a journal guide. So that's all available on there. Links to the podcast are on there, and links for the course. The course isn't available yet, and I'm fully booked on one-to-ones, but there's options to sign up for those as well. So just head over to the website and have a little smooch around, and then just reach out. There's a contact page on there as well, so just reach out and come and say hello.
Incredible. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a really great, empowering conversation. I loved it.
It's been great. Thanks for having me.